Do you want to learn effective ways to build relationships, generate sales, and grow your business from successful entrepreneurs, startups, and CEOs without listening to a long interview? If so, you've come to the right place. Gresham Harkless values your time and is ready to share with you precisely the information you're in search of. This is the I Am CEO podcast.
Hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Cordero Johnson of the B.R.E.A.K.S Media. Cordero, it's awesome to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be here. I'm excited for this.
Super excited to have you on. And what I want to do is just read a little bit more about Cordero so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And CJ, aka CEOHaize, is the epitome of lovable asshole. Host of the Awakened Soul, Love, Lust, and Badass Soul, co-owner of the B.R.E.A.K.S Media, he tells it like it is and consistently challenges you to think a little deeper. Haize is always up to talk all things sports, TV, film, soul music. Just be ready for him to put his dark and twisted spin on it. CJ, are you ready to speak to the I Am CEO community?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So to kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more about what I call your CEO story. What led you to start your business?
So I started my podcast initially just off the strength that I had a lot to say, and I wanted to do, like, back when I started the Awakened Soul, at the time, mental health and things like that weren't really talked about. Thank God we're talking about it more in the community. Yeah. So I wanted to have those conversations. From that spun off Love, Lust, and Badass Soul. And then in doing those two podcasts, over the course of the year and a half I was doing it at that point, I had met a lot of other creatives, a lot of other podcasts that kind of lacked infrastructure. And what I wanted to do, just because I love doing this, I'm like, all right, let me help them. And in that, it was like, okay, I can really create my own company out of this. So the B.R.E.A.K.S Media was birthed. And what I wanted to do with the B.R.E.A.K.S Media was I wanted it to be a platform for Black creatives, not just podcasters, but blog writers, artists. We have writers on the team that actually had published books. So I really wanted to create something that was everything Black and beautiful in the culture, all in one place. So
nice. I appreciate you definitely for doing that, because I think that's one of the beautiful things about having all these tools at our disposal, whether it be blogs, podcasts, YouTube, all these different tools. We can definitely have our own voice. And if there's not somebody creating something for our voice, then, people like you get the opportunity to build that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes you have to make it yourself. And, that's what I hope if anyone gets anything from my story, it's that you can do it. If you see a lane or if you see a space where you wish that there was something for creatives or wish there was something for you, you should create it if it's not there. And that's what I hope people learn from that.
Absolutely. It's all about making a way. Sometimes when you think there's no way, you have an opportunity to do that. So I wanted to drill a little bit deeper to hear a little bit more about what you're doing with your podcast and B.R.E.A.K.S Media. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you're serving your clients?
Yeah. So what we do with the B.R.E.A.K.S Media is we kind of, because we pull so many creators from so many different lanes in, is that we all feed each other creatively. And then what my job as the owner is to create the platform for these creatives to launch off at and to really get exposure. So whether that be edit podcasts for them, whether it be sit in meetings to help them come up with content ideas, or connecting them with other people, whether it be sponsors or guests to interview or whatever, that's really what I do as far as being the CEO of the B.R.E.A.K.S Media. With my solo podcast, what I aim to do is to push people to think, I push people to realize that there's a difference between agreeing and understanding. And that's kind of the basis of my solo podcast, is that I have conversations with people. I prefer when I'm opposed to my guests. And that doesn't mean in a confrontational way. That means in a way we can both openly talk about our view on whatever the topic is that week. And then we can hopefully both learn something from it. And not necessarily to say who's right or who's wrong, but it's to gain an understanding. Because even if I don't agree with what their standpoint is, I can walk away from that saying, all right, well, that gives me another tool in my toolbox in this situation for when I talk to the next person, or to understand what the other side is thinking on something. So that's really what I want to do with my solo platform. And with the B.R.E.A.K.S Media, I really want the B.R.E.A.K.S Media to be the premier Black-owned media company. We're getting into film. We have an album coming out. We podcast, YouTube channel, blog writers, books. So really what I want that B.R.E.A.K.S Media stamp to be when it's all said and done is that you know that you're getting a true representation of that slice of our culture, whatever they may be talking about at that time.
Nice. I definitely appreciate that. And I also appreciate, how, getting the podcast and having, people that you're interviewing. I think it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like it stretches you sometimes when you get somebody that has a different viewpoint, because you get to hear something that maybe you never heard before, and maybe you never even looked at it from that perspective. So it only helps us. It helps me to grow when that happens. I don't know if it does the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I always say that with the podcast, I never want to present anything like I know it. I present my opinion on it, and I present the facts, and then let the audience and myself learn from whatever happens from there. Like, it's as much of a learning experience. Like, a lot of people, when they say they get into podcasting, they say they got into entertainment or media. I like to look at it as I got into education for me and for my listeners and for other people. So that's the way I choose to look at my journey, my personal journey in podcasting.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I always say, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people on the earth, because I get the opportunity to interview awesome people like yourself and get to learn a little bit from you. And then I take a little bit from myself, and then all of a sudden I seem a little bit smarter than what I may not necessarily be. So yeah. I definitely have that same viewpoint. So you might have already touched on this, but I wanted to ask you for what I call your secret sauce. And it could be for you or for B.R.E.A.K.S Media, but what do you feel kind of sets you or your organization apart?
I say that it's embracing you. I think that the biggest thing with podcasts or any really form of media is that the topics may get people in, but what keeps them coming back and what grows a more deeper connection is them feeling connected to you as a person. And I would say my secret sauce is to never let content dictate my show. I let my show dictate the type of content that I'm presenting forward. So it's all about the message that I got into this for. And I have an episode on my podcast. It's titled Get the Fluff Out. And it's me admitting that at one point in my podcast, I think I started too much making it easy for my listeners, like talking about the subjects that was easily for them to digest. I had to get away from that. I had to get back on what was my focus of getting into this. And me sharing that personal journey was hoping the next creative cannot that as well, because it's easy to fall into what your listeners want to listen to. But when you think about it, why should that dictate what you create? Like they're coming for you. So create what you want to create and let the people who rock with it.
Exactly. I always say, when you run your own race and you stay true to yourself, you can never really lose. It's when you start trying to play or run somebody else's race or play somebody else's game. That's often when you lose, because, you're not being true to yourself, and it's hard to win when you're doing that. So I appreciate you for doing that in your way as well. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And this might be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but something that makes you more effective and efficient.
Okay. And it's funny because I keep this in my studio on my desk. It's The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. I think that not only helps you understand you, but it helps you understand others. And in any type of business, whatever your creative lane, whatever your business is, the whole purpose of it is to connect with people who want your product.
Perfect. Yeah, it's funny you picked up that book, because I've never actually seen that book, but I'm a big Robert Greene fan, and I picked up the audio book, and it's got to be one of the longest audio books I've ever had. It's so long, and I didn't realize it before I got it, but it's so much, great information in there, like you mentioned about, human nature, about not only yourself, but also other people. And you need to have that, because this is a world made of humans. So one way, shape, or form, whether you stay on your computer for the rest of your life, you're going to come across people and humans and need to know how to interact with them. And now I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO nugget. And this is a word of wisdom or piece of advice, or if you can hop into a time machine, what would you tell your younger business self?
Ooh, if I could tell my younger self something, it would be embrace what makes you unique. And that I grew up overseas. I grew up in Italy. So when I came back to the States, I had this whole different perspective of people. And for so long, I didn't really express it as much. I didn't put it out there, but that's what makes me unique. So I would say whatever is the thing that makes you, whatever is your little quirk, embrace it fully. Don't hide from it, because that's where the magic is in that bit of difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right in line with everything you said and everything you're building, just staying true to yourself, staying true to your passion, your vision, and continuing with that. So I think that's great advice. So tell my younger business self that as well, because it never hurts to hear that too many times. And
Yeah.
now I wanted to ask you for my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show.
Okay.
So what does being a CEO mean to you?
It would absolutely be learning how to lead and serve. I think that you have to know how to serve people if you really want to lead people. And that's what so many people, I think, especially a lot of young people, don't really realize is that it's not just about telling people what to do. Sometimes it's about showing them. Sometimes it's about helping them. And I think that another thing to me is like learning that sometimes the growing moment is in failing. Sometimes you have to let people fail. Sometimes you have to fail yourself. That's where you're going to grow at. That's where where the magic happens to me. So it's really taking all of that and putting it into a way that you can give it to other people and help them. I think that overall, just being a CEO and owning my own company has really taught me that I enjoy seeing other people win more, maybe even more than I enjoy seeing myself win. So.
Absolutely. I think that's a great definition. And it's very important to kind of remember the process of what it takes to get wherever, you want to. Cause it's funny. I was just on Instagram and I was looking at some posts and I think I commented that, anytime you have a baby and baby's trying to learn how to walk and the baby falls down, you don't say, oh, just stay down there because maybe walking isn't your thing. It's a process. They have to fall down to learn how to walk and they have to do that. And you can't hold their hand the entire time. Just like as you're talking about, you got to let your people sometimes fail because they're going to learn from that. They're going to be better, and then you're going to be better as well too.
Absolutely.
Nice. And Cordero, I truly appreciate your time. What I wanted to do was pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let the readers and listeners know, and then of course how best they can get a hold of you, hear about all the awesome things that you're doing, and subscribe to your podcast.
Yeah. So, anything additional, I am in the middle of a live show tour. I'll be in Atlanta, July 27th. So check out the tickets there. You can go to the B.R.E.A.K.S Media.com. You guys can follow me personally at CEOHaize. That's CEOHaize. You can follow the B.R.E.A.K.S Media at the B.R.E.A.K.S Media on every social media platform. And the website is the B.R.E.A.K.S Media.co. That's where you can find me and all the great content that we're creating over at the team.
Awesome. We'll have all those links in the show notes as well, but I truly appreciate you and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
All righty, you too.
All right. And I'll cut it off here. All right, Cordero, what I wanted to ask you now is what I call like your secret sauce. And could be for you or for the B.R.E.A.K.S Media, but it's pretty much what you feel kind of distinguishes you or your organization and sets you apart.
It's definitely, I think what sets us apart is us embracing who we are as creatives, as podcast hosts, as YouTube hosts, as writers. I think that what we do over at the B.R.E.A.K.S Media is that we have podcasts that cover everything from music to mental health to sex to love to relationships to gossip for the women. We have really a podcast that or a show or a writer that takes every slice of our culture and puts it in there, but it's unique to that host. It's unique to that host's experiences and what they go through. And I think that's what really sets us apart is that we embrace us and we present it out and we don't try to do anything for the sake of the show. We don't try to have a show first. We let the host dictate that. So I think that's what definitely makes us unique, and also our just the multitude of things that we're trying to do. I feel like with a lot of Black-owned podcast networks in general, what you start running into is that a lot of the podcasts are the exact same. And I was originally part of a podcast network that was kind of like a lot of the shows were all the exact thing. And in creating my own media company, I wanted it to be far reaching. There's no show that covers the same topic. So that's what really makes us unique, I think.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the mission driven kind of purpose that you have in putting everything together as well, too, because you had a vision for what you wanted to create and you were part of something that maybe wasn't exactly what you wanted to be. So just like any true entrepreneur, you decided to kind of create that yourself. So I definitely appreciate that. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit and ask you for what I call a CEO hack. And this might be an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but it's something that makes you more effective and efficient.
Okay. And so the hack that I have is The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. It's an amazing book. It really breaks down you to not only realize your own kind of way of thinking and your own nature, but also other people. And I think that that's what's important, is that no matter what type of lane you're in creatively or what business you have, is that ultimately you're trying to connect something to people. You're trying to connect that to people, and knowing how they think, knowing how they break things down, that psyche is really, really important. So his book, well, two of his books, that book and also the 33 Strategies of War, really formed my personal managerial style. I think I read that book when I was like between 19 and 21. And it really, that's when stuff snapped. And like now I'm known as like this kind of this, critical thinker and this higher thinker. And I would say that book really helped transition from teenage Cordero to adult Cordero. And it's a book that I go back and read it probably once every 3 years, because I learn something new every time. So those two books really would be my hacks to being a CEO. And I think that anyone can get something out of it.
Absolutely. I definitely add those. Like I mentioned, I have the audio version of the first one, and that's a beast to say the least. And definitely, I haven't heard of the other one. I always heard of The Art of War, but I'm definitely going to pick that up as well too. So I appreciate you for sharing that with us.
Oh, anytime, man.
Thank you for listening to the I Am CEO podcast, powered by Blue 16 Media. Tune in next time and visit us at IAM329.co. I Am CEO is not just a phrase, it's a community. Be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating. Grab CEO gear at www.ceogear.co. This has been the I Am CEO podcast with Gresham Harkless. Thank you for listening.